Hello, ladies and gentlemen, hope we're all doing well. Today, for today's video, I decided that instead of making, Minecraft again, which I will, I'm a big fan of Minecraft, there will be more Minecraft videos coming, I decided to do a video on roleplay specifically. Now, what I'm specifically referencing, I am going to be doing it through the medium of World of Warcraft. However, the things I'm going to talk about should be able to apply to any version of roleplay, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons, World of Warcraft, FiveM, Arma Life, whatever medium you guys are roleplaying in. This should help. And what we're going to be dealing with today is going to be specifically dealing with backstories. Now, just a little bit of preface before I actually get into the content of this. Number one, I was actually going to do a Minecraft video, but since I needed to do this anyway, and I've been wanting to write my character's backstory for some time on my third roleplay character on World of Warcraft, I decided to, bring you guys along and see if we can make a little thing about this, because I think I've gotten pretty good at the making the backstory type stuff, and I think it could be useful to some of you, especially since the original channel stuff was around roleplay. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, first things first, guys, one of the things that I want to bring up is the fact of research. So, this is a little bit different for World of Warcraft because you can do a little bit more research, and it's a more of a lore based game. It's a little bit more difficult to do that with, for example, FiveM, but as some examples, you could bring in something that happened within the campaign into your backstory. So, one of the examples I'll bring up, if I can just get this open, is this. So, I have a lore document here, which is the timeline for World of Warcraft specifically, right? So, year 0 was 25 years ago to Classic, and year 25, which is the Gathering Storm, is when Classic is taking place because the Burning Crusades right after, right? So you can see that King Varian of Stormwind has been kidnapped, which is all the Westfall quests and even some of the Stormwind quests that are showing you a little bit of that and a whole lot of stuff like that. This I'm going to weigh a lot of stuff on. Now, as you can see up in my tabs here, you can see that I have a little bit more, right? Lordaeron, Arathor, specifically, Arathor, to my understanding of reading this, was an empire that happened before Lordaeron. So this was in, I think it's minus 2800, so that was 2,800 years ago, right? I actually don't know what this means, by the way, but 2,800 years ago, before they split into the Seven Kingdoms, being I think Stormwind, Lordaeron, and a bunch of other things. This is very important to making a backstory. You need to kind of keep this in mind if you're going to be weighing it off something. And you can see I have more documents here and stuff like that. But one of the things I wanted to bring up before we actually get into writing this is one of the don'ts that you probably shouldn't be doing when it comes to backstory and stuff like that. Don't take a TV show, for example. Don't just go and see what that character is, copy the name, and copy the backstory. Try to be a little bit more unique. You don't have to be like, oh, everything's from my brain and nothing's inspired, right? Inspiration is fine, but taking a one-for-one, or just calling your character something really stupid is not going to be well received in some cases, in some groups. Now, other groups, it might be, right? But, I've seen my fair few Ben Dover names in FiveM, and my opinion is that it's kind of dumb, if I'm being honest. But, do what you like. I would just say, try to take some inspiration somewhere, a trope or whatever, and then just do something else with it, move a different direction. Like, for example, Lord of the Rings, if you went with the Hidden Ranger Aragon thing, what if instead of the hobbits coming into Hobbiton and getting saved by Aragon, Aragon fucking pulled out the sword to start fucking slashing him. That would be a twist, right? And that's something very small, right? You can really expand that out. But let's actually get into it. So this is Captain Alindor Arathor. And it's funny that I bring up Aragon because that name is very similar. But this is a descendant of that old ass 2,800 years ago kingdom. This is a descendant from that kingdom, right? That's my like ancestry, right? And you don't have to go super deep into it. I just like doing this because, you know, I think I get a lot out of it. But that's my ancestry. Now, World of Warcraft actually has a really cool add-on called TRP. This is TRP 3, Total RP 3 up there. So you can add a lot of details. So, for example, I'm going for an older Kratos. So, obviously, Kratos in God of War right now is pretty old. But I just want an older version of boy, you know? That's kind of the voice I'm going for. Because, you know, that's it helps other people reading your backstories. It helps with reading language, right? Facial features. Blind in the right eye and a scar down the right cheek. Now, I wanted to do this not because it's tropey, but because I wanted to wear an eye patch. If I'm being 100% honest. Let me show you. Because we can... Everybody loves dress up, right? This is the Mog I'm going for once I actually get level 40 here. That's his right eye, and there's a thing there. And then that's the gear. Mind you, that's going to be when I am actually in the Scarlet Crusade, because that's part of my roleplay. But let's actually get into it. So, how do you write a backstory? How do you write? Where do you start? For me, anytime I'm writing a backstory, I try to start off with the birth, right? So, I'm going to take, because I did a little bit of writing in my document, I'm going to take a little starter here. And I also have some notes in here for me. So, 50 years before the First War. This is my timeline stuff. So, anytime I do anytime I do a backstory, I try to keep a timeline in because it keeps everything straight in my head. So, I'll do header 3, I think. Header 3 left. And then let's go ahead and copy this. And we'll go ahead and hit the save button. Okay? So 50 years before the First War. This is just my formatting as well. So, Alindor Arathor was born in the kingdom, within the kingdom of Stromgarde, the original capital city of the Arthurian Empire. That's a connection back to the lore, right? That is a fact. That is where Stromgarde came from, so that's where it is, right? And I have some dots here because I want to write more. 2 weeks after the Third War ended. This is another header 3 because this is a timeline, right? Let's go ahead and actually copy it. Now I only wrote 2 weeks because I actually need to recheck my lore document to where I can actually see what the specific date is. But that might be sufficient. Anyway, so talking about writing a backstory, it is the easiest in my mind to start off where it's born, right? So, for example, some of the things that I think about when I'm writing a story is that how did they grow up? What was their influences to where they got? I already know where the end of the story is, right? This is the end of the story of the story of, you know, he was captured by the Syndicate when he was like in his 60s, I think. And then right now he is technically being held in the Scarlet Crusade dungeon because that's how I want to start my story, right? But that is the end. That's another thing that I should mention before I go into this. Try to write the end of your immediate story, your backstory. Try to write the end first. Because the reason why you want to do that is because sometimes you can write yourself into a corner and then it gets a little iffy. You don't have to. It's just, you know, sometimes it's all around preference, right? But let's actually get into it. So, he was born in Stromgarde, and we know that he becomes a captain of the guard. So, like, what happened in his formative years, right? Let's Like, am I going to talk about his parents? Am I going to talk about a battle he had? Am I going to talk about it, like what kind of occupation he had in his like 1 to 10, like ages 1 to 10? These are all background things that are interesting to put in, but it's definitely not required, right? You can definitely skip and just say, you know, like, oh, he's in his 30s. His village got attacked. He was a farmer. His village got attacked by Defias or, you know, bandits or robbers or whatever, and you know, he decided to do something about it, and you know, worked on himself, and then became a hero, or an adventurer, as we call him in Classic. I should mention that you can rate as little or as much as you want, as long as it's detailed, right? When I was trying to write a backstory for my FiveM character, Jeremy Crane, I remember writing like 13 or 18 pages, and sometimes that's enough, sometimes that's too much, right? Now, it managed to get me into like New Day roleplay relatively easy, but that could also be because I also linked I think 700 hours worth of YouTube VODs that I could have clicked any one. And I said, click any one and look at my RP, and you'll know that I'm not an idiot, right? But, you know, that is something to keep in mind. So now, I'm just trying to move down the timeline, right? So I'm basically trying to get his backstory document to be like 4 or 5 paragraphs, to where I have the rest for what comes next, right? Because there's going to be a lot of writing still. So 25 years before the First War means that Elendor is 25 years old, which means he's been a guard for 5 years. Now, what has happened during those 5 years? Has he excelled? Has he failed? Is he like a sergeant now? What has happened, right? Because there's going to be a time, and there's going to be a time where there's going to be a paradigm switch, right? So, if I look at my lore document, right, this is where we can get some ideas. So, we are 50 years before this is when we started, right? So, it's right after the War of Three Hammers. Not right after, but some years after. And that's like the main thing that's happened recently. My thought is going to be, okay, when the First War happens, what is the thing that actually happens, right? So Sargeras launches another attack on Azeroth, using the orcs from the world of Draenor as his pawns. Orcs forces fill out through the magical gateway, called the Dark Portal, which links Azeroth to Draenor, and they leave a swath of destruction, right? So thinking about this, like, would, in the place that Elendor is, would he have seen any of this? Like, would there be any telltale signs? Would there have been an invasion party earlier on, before the First War, that kind of give you a little bit of an idea? Would the elementals be a little bit out of whack because they know some dark magic's happening down in the Blasted Lands? These are things that I'm thinking about, specifically in reference to the lore document that I'm looking at right now, to kind of infer what Elendor's interaction is, what my character's interaction is, right? So with that, I can make a little thing there, or I can just skip to when the First War happened, and like what happened there, right? So something else we could do, and this might be a little bit tropey, but we could have it to where Elendor is kind of failing at a city guard. He's on the way out. He's got a lot of combat experience, but he's not great. But when he's kind of like a little inept, right? But when the First War happens, that gets his ass in gear, because, you know, then there's lives at actual stake. Because I'd imagine the War of Three Hammers being the most consequential battle in the last 230 years means that it's relatively peaceful within that bracket, but that is 230 years after the War of Three Hammers. So that little block there is definitely going to be relatively peaceful, I'd imagine. So another thing I wanted to mention while we're here, obviously I just wrote a little bit. something that is a useful tool that you can kind of, I guess the word would be self-actuate yourself, is going to be asking questions that you don't have an answer to yet, and then making up an answer. For example, right here I just said that he hadn't really done anything within the guards, but he was doing just enough, right? Bare minimum. And then I put in this little note here that he preferred to ride his horse out into hellspread foothills. And the big question here is why? What is the reason for that? Did he have a significant other? Did he have a friend? Did he have another job there? Did he have something else? Was he doing thievery? Like, all of these things are questions that you could be answering with more backstory that are inferring the character, right? So why? So for me, I think I'm gonna go with something simple, right? I think he was just stealing alcohol. That's it. I think he was just stealing booze because Stromgard Keep is a dry town, and that's gross. What I could mention, and I could infer something else with that, right? So, where does that path lead in 5 years, 10 years? Like, where does that go? Do we get yelled at? Does he get fired from his job? Does he get locked up in prison? Like, you're basically thinking about the butterfly effect, but you're making it all up, right? So, I think that he was stealing alcohol. So let's go ahead and illustrate that. Okay, so now we're actually getting into the meat and potatoes of this lore document. We still have like another 2 or 3 paragraphs to write down, but now we are getting into the real stuff. So this title is apt, The First War. So in the First War, just to reiterate so everyone knows what's going on, Sargeras he just launched an attack on Azeroth, right? So orcs are going everywhere, destroying everything, and they're just pushing from Blasted Lands through everything, right? Now, it doesn't push as far as, to my knowledge, as far as Hillspread, right? But it gets stopped at Burning Steps, to my memory. I could be wrong, but to memory, it stops at Burning Steps. But the war lasts 5 years. So these are going to be very important years for our character. Now, something I should note is that we have skipped another 25 years, right? So we went from 25 years plus a year here, and some three months there. So right now, Alindor is 50, right? So is there anything we want to say before we go into this? And the answer is yes, because we want to tell the reader, and also in like really have this wrote out, because this is kind of crucial to the character Alindor is going to be. Okay, so now just to summarize kind of what I've written here. So basically, I'm just trying to set up how Alindor gets promoted to captain, and like what are the following things that happen, right? Because this is a good explanation on how my story has come to be, and this is really what backstory writing is. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill out the final parts, meaning I'm going to write in Alindor was promoted to captain due to his assistance with the alliance and all that. And then I'm going to write in the final part of my backstory. So now that we have the second war done, the first war done, we are almost there. We are 5 years from Classic, and this is where our story ends, our backstory ends. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to write what Alindor Arathor's experience is during this. And something I should note is that this is kind of important because the people I roleplay with are very, very focused on this section of the timeline, because this is when the Lich King comes in and goes and destroys everything, right? So, this is going to be pretty important to the whole thing. Like, what happens with the Scourge? Where do they go? Did the Scourge go through Stromgarde Keep, or did they skip it, right? That's where my lore document comes in and me reading it and stuff like that, but this is where we actually finish our story. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. That is the story. That's how I make my stories. I think that you could put this in whatever medium you can. Obviously, it might be a little bit easier for World of Warcraft roleplay because I'm using the exact tips. But just for a little, like, quick ones for, like, a few games that I understand. For one, FiveM, GTA, just use the main campaign, dumb it down a bit, add a little bit of realism, or don't. It's up to you. It's your story, right? Use things that are things that have happened. For example, the bombing of the FIB building. That would be something that has happened in the game. Or like these banks being robbed, right? You could add that to your backstory, like your reaction, stuff like that. Speaking about Arma life, obviously where the island is a, I think it's a contested island for between two factions. I think it's trying to resemble some kind of USA versus Russia thing. I don't really know all too much about Arma life because I haven't played it in like fucking 12 years or something. It was a long time ago. But just try to search up as much as you can to kind of use it as a basis, but you don't need to, right? You can just make it all the fuck up. You can go from the bottom to the top. But for me, specifically with World of Warcraft, I'm a big fan of kind of like touching the story a little bit, bringing it into mine, changing a little bit, or being kind of a fly in the wall or a member within that story because it grounds it in reality, right? So here it is. We can change a lot of stuff with TRP. I just add a little picture. I'll add some parchment or whatever. But this was a third-person story, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to get this edited and get it out because it'll be out by tomorrow. And hopefully it wasn't too long. And if it was, listen, there's only so much I can do about it, right? Because this is kind of a heavy topic when it comes to length, because it is talking about text writing and stuff like that. And those things don't come quickly. But yeah, I will update the father name, the place, and stuff like that. Don't you worry. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have a good one.